In this example, we will take a look at creating a compound animation which we can run in the background. Now, this uses CSS keyframes, and although it may appear complicated, it's actually pretty straightforward. It's not a difficult animation. You'll spend more time creating the artwork than writing the code. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look first at the Photoshop document setup. So I just have an image of some gears that are a single composite background. And then I went ahead and I went in and I made selections of the different gears. Okay, and those gears, let's see, let's go ahead and turn this layer off. So here are the various gears. Okay, now this is the corner gear, so I just made a selection of this, and then you can see in this example here, now it's a little tough to see, but here's this corner, and then when I copied this and I moved it over, okay, or in this case down, I just moved it down and rotated it or inversed it or flipped it or whatever I had to do. And the same would be true of this part of the gear. So I copied it, moved it over here, and then I made another copy. And I moved it down here. So you might have to mirror them, you might have to rotate them, you might have to flip them horizontal, flip them vertical, whatever it takes. But when all is said and done, it ends up being a single, one large composite gear. And that gear is, let me go ahead and close the big gear here. So we have this gear, and then what I end up doing is in the animation, I just use this gear twice, and it ends up being the gear up here also. All right, so let's turn these off, and we'll turn off the big gear. So I've taken the background, and then I've selected this gear, this one, this one, this one, this one here, and made a selection. So if I open up fade gear background, let's turn this off, and we'll turn on fade gear background. Okay, and we now have this. So let me turn this off here. So here are the gears I selected, and then I copied and pasted that selection onto another layer. Then I used an adjustment layer to quickly darken the gears. So when I turn this layer back on, those gears are darkened. Okay, so when I now place these gears over the top, it's going to look more believable, if you will, okay, as far as the animation. Okay, so what I would do, and another nice aspect of placing the files as far as the background, the cutout overlay, and the adjustment layer inside of my folder, if you're not already familiar with this, now it's really easy to do an export as, do a quick export or do an export as, and you'll get a single composite file of all of the files inside of your folder. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at our HTML setup. All right, so we'll go to Dreamweaver, and this is actually pretty simple. In the body of the document, I'm just going to create a header, which would be pretty common for any project. So this is going to be an animation that would be in the background of our header. And then I have a div element, and inside this div element, I have my image, which is my background, and then I have each of the individual gears. Okay, and you'll notice I'm using the big gear twice, one in the upper left corner and one in the lower right corner. Now I've taken this approach with the div holding the image and the other divs with the gears is because now I can target this div and I can move this div and all of the gears inside will move along with it. So it makes repositioning, whether they're subtle changes or a major change as far as the movement, it makes it much easier if these elements become descendants of this element. All right, let's go ahead and look at the CSS now, and we'll go up to the top. I have the links to the different resources on W3 Schools. And again, like the other videos, the other demos, all of the files associated with this, a live demo and an archive of the files, will be available for download in the read more below the video. Okay, so no big thing here. We have the header. We're just setting up the header as far as its position. What is important is the position is relative. And I'm setting the overflow to hidden. So anything which is a descendant inside, which might be larger, is going to be cropped out. Now we're going to target header div. Div is the parent to all of the background image and all the gears. And again, the overflow is hidden. This time the position is absolute, so I can move it anywhere I want inside the header. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm moving this 100 pixels from the top, 100 pixels from the left, so it's offset from the background, and it doesn't look like the gear is rotating over an image of itself because it's offset. It'll make the animation a bit more believable. And of course, the header div image I'm setting to a width of 100%, so if I change the size of the header, then the div will change accordingly. Now, we don't need to look at all of these, and it looks like I have everything pretty cleaned up here. I'm going to pause the video and clean up this formatting just a little bit. All right, I'm not sure why whenever I open and close this file, why the formatting continues to change, but I cleaned it up a little bit. I'm not going to worry about it too much at this time. All right, so let's look at what's happening, and we'll take a look first at gear 1. And I'm using absolute position and top and left, or right and top, or bottom and right, whatever. I'm using absolute position and top, right, bottom, left, a combination of two to get the gear where I want it inside. Then we're setting a width and height of our gear, and that width and height would coincide with the actual width and height of the gear. Okay, now the animation, usually we create a matrix. So I would just have animation, and then the name of the animation, the duration, the delay, the timing function, the iteration count, the direction. But I've listed them out longhand here, so it's a little easier if you're fairly new to this to understand what's going on. So we're going to start off by giving the animation a name. The name is user defined. I'm going to call this Gear 1 Annie. Annie is short for animation. The animation duration I have as 10.3 seconds. Now this is a large gear, and larger gears will likely go slower than smaller gears. Smaller gears will go faster. The animation delay, I don't want a delay, so I'm going to set this at 0. So again, I did these longhand so you could see the different animation properties that we can work with. So I don't want a delay, but there may be animations you create where you want X amount of time to expire before the animation begins. The animation timing function I have set to linear. So this is the velocity. So if I were to use ease in, out, I would be creating a stop to full acceleration, stop to full acceleration to full stop. And over 10.3 seconds, you would definitely see, if I did not have linear and we had ease in out, our animation would come to a stop, would increase to speed, and then slowly come to a stop, and then slowly over and over and over, okay? So I want linear, so this is a continuous, what's going to be a continuous revolution, okay? Now, the animation iteration count is how many times we want the animation to play. And I'm going to set the count to infinite. Then we have animation direction. I'm going to set the direction to normal, but we could also reverse the animation. The next is transform, rotate, and I'm using a transform, and my rotate is going to be 0 degrees. Now we also have a transform origin, and you could set an origin point, but I believe the default is in the center. But if we had transform hyphen origin and then colon 50%, 50%, the first 50% would be the x-axis, the second would be the y-axis. So depending on where you wanted the origin or how you wanted the object to rotate, mine's going to rotate in the center, and I believe that is the default. That's why I don't have the transform hyphen origin here. All right, so the transform rotate will be 0 degrees. Now we're going to use our keyframes at keyframes, and we are going to call our animation name, and we're going to use a simple from and to. So we're going to start our animation from rotate 0 degrees, which is what the default is here. This is our start point, okay? And we are going to go to 359 degrees over 10.3 seconds. So we will get almost an entire revolution. And we're only going to 359 because when we go back, then we'll go to 0. If we went 360, 360 is the same position as 0, and it would look as if your gear actually paused for a moment. Now, we don't need to discuss each of the other gears because it's the same setup. The only difference is the animation duration. Okay, that's the only change. So when we go back and we look at our animation, what you will need to figure out is, number one, are you going to rotate clockwise? Are you going to rotate counterclockwise? So let's go at our code, and you'll notice the animation direction. If I want to go counterclockwise, reverse. If I want to go clockwise, then I'll set normal. Okay, let's go back and take a look again real quick. What you will need, and what you'll probably spend the most time figuring out, unless you you know the circumference and the diameter of your gears, then you could do the math and figure things out, especially if you were to keep your gears in proportion, like 100%, 50%, 20%, something that's easy to calculate. So what we need to do is think about how long the animation lasts, so how long it takes for a single rotation, and then our smaller gears will have to animate faster. Now when you look in this area here, the mesh is not perfect, but this is a background animation. It's going to have something else over the top, and I'm not overly concerned that they're not meshed up. Now that right here is pretty close. This one gets a little out of sync, and it gets out of sync. So a moment it is in sync, and then it gets out of sync. And that really comes down to the diameter of the gear, how many gears are here, the teeth, I should say, the diameter of this gear, and how many teeth. And if you want to take your animation to that level of being believable, go for it. All I want is an animation of some gears that are rotating, okay? So I'm not going to be hyper critical about this. All right, so hopefully we have covered to a good enough degree for you to understand how to create rotating gears in a background using CSS keyframes.